Before we dive in, here's another show you can enjoy in the True Story FM family of entertainment podcasts.
Meet Zinnia.
You are being very polite to someone who is attempting to kill us.
Her wife, Saffron.
You know I'm wildly, madly in love with you.
And their best friend, Goldie.
Glad we didn't miss all the fun.
Swords in hand, they defend their city from the worst of humanity.
I am Lord Buxton Blue.
Equity Electric.
Herr Haig. Virgil Walcott. Vicious Suave.
Follow their adventures on the Swashbuckling Ladies Debate Society audio drama podcast. Available now at truestory.fm/swashbuckling.
Hey, movie lovers, I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson. We are the hosts of the Next Reel Film Podcast.
If you're passionate about films like we are, you'll love our show. Each week, we dive deep into a movie, discussing everything from the story and performances to the cinematography and score.
Not to mention budgets and awards. We have covered iconic series like Francis Ford Coppola's The Godfather trilogy, examining themes of power, family, and the dark side of the American dream.
We've explored the works of groundbreaking directors like Catherine Bigelow, discussing her mastery of tension.
We've looked at heist films, great car chases, great years in film, couples on the run, and more.
Our discussions go beyond the surface, examining what makes each film tick. We believe that when the movie ends, the conversation begins.
And we'd love for you to join that conversation. Find the Next Reel Film Podcast on your favorite podcast app or at thenextreel.com.
The Next Reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Welcome back to the Marvel Movie Minute, a weekly podcast which we disassemble a film for the Marvel Cinematic Universe into 5-minute segments and then examine them in obsessive and occasionally hilarious detail. I'm Kyle Olson from the Storywell podcast.
Hey, and I'm Rob Cabasco. And Kyle.
Yes, Rob.
I'm going to tell you the story about a man named Józef Bednarski.
Ooh.
A still living at the time of recording Polish-American bodybuilder and former professional wrestler, best known by his ring name, Ivan Putski, also known as the Polish Hammer, for his move called the axe handle, also known as a double axe handle or a double axe handle smash or a double sledge, which is executed by striking your opponent with two fists held together in the fashion of holding an axe. Best for demolishing opponents like Mr. Fuji or your personal exoskeleton who threatens your girlfriend in the middle of the night. And that brings us to these minutes.
That's right, to minute 21 of Iron Man 3 from 2013, directed by Shane Black and written by Drew Pearce and Shane Black together. So, yeah, we pick up where we left off, which is we've turned the Iron Man armor into a back massager. The Iron Man Mark 42 suit is giving a massage to Pepper Potts. He is asking her what she thought of the rabbit. Now, the rabbit obviously is a giant rabbit that is outside the house that is a Christmas present for Pepper. She did not know about, and says, did you like the rabbit? And so there's a whole banter about like it's too big to fit in the house, and he's bringing in somebody to blow out the wall so they can fit it in. It's just like this sort of really nice Pepper Tony banter. But then things take a little bit of a flirty turn, and so she says, "Why don't you take off that faceplate so I can, think properly?" And he does this sort of beep borp. I can't. It doesn't seem to be working quite right. Why don't you kiss it on the facial slit? Which is there's some romantic talk for you.
Tony. Come on.
But I gotta say, I would give credit to Gwyneth Paltrow, because it takes a really good actor to make a line like, "Let me find a crowbar to jimmy that thing open," and have it sound sexy.
Well, I mean,
so here's my question to you as we sort of before we move on to the thing. At what point do you think that Pepper figured out that Tony is not inside that
okay,
arm?
This is the question of this moment.
Yes.
And I will tell you, watch this now several times. Mm-hmm. She knows the moment she walks in and sees the suit on the couch.
Oh, you think so?
Because there is here's the deal. You set this up. You would have to, if you wanted it to be known, you would have to insert some sort of raised eyebrow or something where she goes, She doesn't. She's playing it with a little bit of attitude the whole way. Mm-hmm. And I absolutely believe she knows the moment she walks in, sees the suit on the couch, she's like, yeah, he's not even here. Son of a bitch. By the way, I think she and here I'm going to take my sort of my theory from the last episode, and I'm going to carry it through. Okay. I think she's like, okay, the rabbit's stupid. Mm-hmm. What am I going to do with that? You're not even here. You got the suit on the couch. Stupid. She decides to play along. I think she sees that love letter from an admiring youngster, and she goes, oh man, I hate you. I just turned down this smoking deal with this super hot dude I used to know. And now you don't even have the guts to be here, because the moment she turns around and turns to him and she starts to slide her fingers up his abdomen, she knows it's not him. She knows, because she goes right into the whole, why don't you go ahead and lift that visor up and let's get to it. Mm-hmm. She knows. I think the whole time she knows, and she hates him. She hates him for it.
My theory was that at the moment that he makes contact with her, that was what I thought. Like, she was having a conversation thinking it was him in the suit. But I actually like yours better.
She's smarter than that. Sort of. I mean, maybe not. I don't know.
So as she says she's going to go out of the garage, she gets the crowbar and turns away. And then once again, Tony being Tony thinks like, oh yeah, now we're going to get it. And then realizes, oh wait, she's figured out she's coming down to where I actually am. And then he says, you can't come in. There's a big radiation leak, which is like a very Star Trek answer.
Oh no, that. It's Han Solo telling them, breaking Princess Leia out of the prison, the cell on the Death Star, going, no, you can't send any people up here. Yeah. We got a radiation leak. Very scary, very dangerous.
But it doesn't work. As she comes down and sees that, in fact, Tony Stark is still in the lab and has sent the armor to greet her instead. He is doing pull-ups.
By the way, when she lose the shoes? She comes down the stairs. Oh. She's barefoot. And I went, wait a minute. When did you lose the shoes? Must be when she sat down.
Yeah. Kicked him off and then came down. And we see a dummy has a plate of food for her. Sort of like to be like, oh, welcome to.
No, is that no? Okay. Yeah. And you don't see what happened. No. Is he holding the plate of food the entire time? Is that the backup plan if she decides to come down the stairs?
I guess so, because when she says, oh, you ate without me, she doesn't look at that plate of food. She looks over to the side. So it must have been his dinner is there. So maybe in the process, he said, oh, quick, grab the food and serve her when she comes down. Because we see what has been taking all his attention away, and that he is looking at things about the Mandarin. So there's a wall of screens and videos and news articles about the Mandarin and the search for him and what people know. And he also is wearing a new headset, which we have not seen before. So a holographic interface that we do, because when we saw the before, like everything was done by all his little internal things that he has put in that suit him. And then the suit can run without them too, because as it's walking around all this stuff too. But it turns out that there now is a different holographic interface thing that is doing that somehow I still think that there's an internal piece that he has, something built into his head, and then this is just sort of accessing it that he's using to control it at the same time. Because we also see that it's not mimicking his movements, because at one point as they're talking, the robot kind of gives her, or the suit gives her a sort of a disapproving look.
Right as he delivers the insult.
Yeah. And so, but he didn't move. He didn't do anything. So
it's neural.
There's an internal thing to be like, send command to turn head to look at her, because he might be seeing it at the same time.
This whole segment is funny. She comes down the stairs. He gets caught.
Yeah.
And very similar to previous movies where he gets caught in compromising positions.
Yeah.
What is so funny about this is not only is the food eaten and Dummy's got the plate.
Yeah.
He's looking at all this stuff while he's doing pull-ups.
Yeah.
That's pretty insulting to Pepper. So, I mean, like, it could
be three things. Like, your girlfriend comes home,
and you're not, and it obviously shows too that he is trying to compensate for a lot of things going on right now in his head.
Yeah. So, he is overstimulating himself. He is doing too many things.
100%. Yes. And then he says the whole thing where she basically, what's the conversation of like, oh, we didn't know if you were coming home or having drinks with Killian.
Yeah.
And she has this she has a really funny, by the way, Gwyneth Paltrow delivers the shock look very well. But as she's standing, the sight gag of the suit, of the empty suit looking to her like with disapproval is very funny.
Yeah, that was a good gag. They talked about it in the commentary of like having it being full on mimicking his movements and stuff too, but they thought that ended up being really distracting because he doesn't turn his head, and it does. It made sense just to do it the way they did. I think it was a good move. Yeah, and she says, "Are you checking up on me?" And then we find out that she is living there, so we know that they're still a couple. That they are living together, and it is date night, and Tony has already ruined it. But then as you go away, and this could be the end, like it could be like a huge fight, or then she would turn the storms out. But instead, for once, Tony Stark gets real. And this is actually really impressive.
Yes.
As this is a big turn for Tony that we don't see him do. This is not manipulation on his part. This really is him finally breaking down and saying, look, I have a problem. So he says, I'm sorry, I'm a piping hot mess. It's been going on for a while. I haven't said anything. And I like about Pepper is she says, oh, really? I didn't notice that at all, bro.
Yeah.
She's been there the whole time. Of course, she knows how much of a mess, but it's just waiting for you to finally admit the fact that, hey, things aren't going great for you and you're in pain and you're having troubles. Yeah, I'm aware. Like, let me be in this with you. And so he is then going on about all the stuff that he's had to deal with. And he says, gods, aliens, other dimensions. I'm a man in a can. So other dimensions is interesting in that. Before we get into like the sort of emotional thing he's doing, because what does that mean?
Well, is that when he escapes, when he's hurling the nuke?
I didn't think that was another dimension. I thought that was just a different part of space. I thought it was just like that was like a tesseract or whatever, tesseract from Wrinkle in Time. Like
right. I think that's his interpretation of what he saw and what he witnessed. That's that's all I think it is. Yeah.
Eventually, there will be other dimensions. Right. But
I think he's talking about it in a way that he can understand it.
Okay.
That's what it appeared like to him.
But obviously gods, because he's been hanging out with one,
right?
And who is also an alien. So gods, aliens, both Thor,
right?
But I know you mean it's the Chitauri is what they're specifically thinking of. This is the crux of what we get into here, and also then we'll spill over into Age of Ultron, which is Tony Stark, used to being top of the world, now has found himself much lower on the food chain than he's used to. That there are powers above him and all the technology he can make. Yeah, they're not quite at the same level. Once again, continuing being how vulnerable he is, he says, I do what I know, I tinker, which is like, yeah, let's see all we're seeing another piece of technology that he's testing out right now too. This whole this face shield autonomous thing. We've not seen this before. So it's another invention that he's testing out as more way to deal with that, rather than dealing with the pain that he's feeling.
So two things. One, when he said man in a can, I thought, wow, it'd have been funnier had he said spam in a can. And that would have been a reference to the old Mercury space program, because that's what the astronauts referred to themselves as, spam in a can. That would have been a fun little connection, right, to that. But also when he says I tinker, immediately you think, well, one, that's his gift. He tinkers. If you want to go fast forward all the way to Infinity War, the solution to it all is because Tony's a tinkerer. Yeah. That's how he unlocks all this. So, and I think that there's an acceptance on Pepper's part. Like this is a really neat scene in that one, he's allowing himself to be vulnerable, and she's there with him for the whole thing. She accepts it, and I think that's a cool story arc that continues on way past this movie.
Yeah, and what is it? They always say like acting is reacting, and it's a full on monologue from RDJ. This whole and in the very Tony Stark way of like doesn't want to talk about it, doesn't want to say this, and he's avoiding eye contact with her almost the entire time as he's laying everything bare. Is saying all the stuff that he's going through and what he's feeling. And he then, as we cross over, he says, I have to protect the one thing I can't live without, and that's you.
Oh,
I mean, that's, I say for the shippers out there, like, Hey, that's pretty good. I mean, that's a pretty honest emotional reaction from Tony Stark, which we don't see a lot of. And this isn't a solution, obviously, but he is acknowledging that he's in pain and that things are not working and he needs help. And so Pepper does a pretty good girlfriend move, which she says, "I'm going to go take a shower," and then leaves. Oh, wait. Sorry. Then she says,
no, there's more.
It's a joke. But like, what I really love is when he says this stuff and she comes over and she takes his head in her hands, and then she pulls off the headset.
Yes.
It's like, that's like stripping away the technology from the man. And so too, and then he like that, you can feel a big reaction in him. Like when she's like, "Oh, right. I even forgot I was still wearing it," kind of a thing.
Right.
And then says, "You're going to join me." So then,
now wait a minute. You're missing. There's some really great stuff here. Okay. She says, what's the line? That the suits protect me, and she's like, "No, they're a distraction." So there's like the whole thing on that. They have this beautiful embrace, and then she's like, "I'm going to take a shower." Pause, and Tony's like,
great reaction from him of like, "Oh, all right, I laid myself bare, but okay, sure."
And you're going to join me, and Tony goes, "Better." And I will just say, indeed, I agree, Tony, better. Hey, a little side thing. Okay, again, we're getting these beautiful wide shots of this space. I can't say enough of how awesome these are. These look amazing. It's one thing
almost like they're showing us a lot of this house because the geography of the house is going to be very important later on in the movie.
Oh, I hope nothing bad happens to it.
No.
Okay, so one thing I could not find. She's coming down the stairs. And behind her at the base of the stairs.
I hoped you had found it because I couldn't find it either.
No, I didn't. I know it's a pile of trash.
It's a big thing. I assume it's a piece of something.
Well, it's got the pieces of the gold and the red from the suit,
right?
From a suit, but it is not clear, and I could not find what it was.
No, I couldn't either. It's like a big, maybe a piece of something from the battle in New York or something, but I couldn't. I sort of blew it up as much as I could, and I could not figure out what that was supposed to be. For a second I got confused. I thought it was maybe Robin's old suit. And is that another DC reference already in this movie? Like, it has vibes of Justice League and the Robin suit. It literally almost in exactly the same spot in the Batcave. For those of you who don't know, with Ben Affleck and his Batfleck and stuff. So I don't know. I wondered about that too. Like, I wonder if that was a piece of something or a deleted scene or something. But
no, couldn't find what it was.
Explaining what that was, but I couldn't find out what that was either. So if listeners, if you have read or seen something, let us know. The contacts on the socials. So then we cut immediately from that because this is a Marvel movie. Immediately to them in bed asleep. And Tony is having a nightmare. So before we get into the nightmare, I want to do a little kind of this. I guess this it's enough that we can call this a deep dive. So between essentially Iron Man 2 and this, there was a comic series written by Matt Fraction. So Matt Fraction is one of the big comic book guys, and some of what he wrote when he was writing Iron Man, his first arc was called The Five Nightmares. And so he wrote a story about Tony Stark and the 5 things that keep Tony up at night. And so the story of the 5 Nightmares and how it rolls out over the course of the thing is sort of sins of the father being revisited on the son, because it's the son of Obadiah Stane and the daughter of Justin Hammer have teamed up and are out for revenge against Tony for things that his father and he did to their father.
Oh.
So, and one of those plots is that they have found a way to use Stark technology to make people into human bombs. And so that you see a little of that in this movie. So there's a little bit of homage to the Extremis of being that way, and that they actually were, but they were suicide bombers, but they were using Stark technology to detonate themselves. And so by the time you get to the end, the 5 nightmares of Tony Stark then are roughly, and I got this was from some fan sites I found. I sort of made a compilation. So his 5 nightmares are: 1, getting drunk again; So the idea that he would relapse and all the work he'd been doing would get undone. 2, that Iron Man becomes cheap, that everyone can do the exact same thing. And then all of a sudden it turns into a whole, like we've seen in Armor Wars, like it becomes everybody has a suit and then things get real bad. 3 is that someone other than him or Rhodey becomes Iron Man. Not because he's jealous, but because he knows the amount of stress and discipline and pain is going to bring, and he doesn't want to inflict that on anybody else. 4 is that Iron Man is obsolete, that he's no longer needed. And if there's no Iron Man, then who is Tony Stark? Like, what does he do with his life if he doesn't have that? And then the 5th one is that someone other than Tony being the reason that Iron Man becomes cheap, and someone basically that they figure out how to make Iron Man 2.0 the next thing, and he's not a part of it. So we have a little bit of that sort of influencing a little bit of that. I think of this movie. I think that they had read that, and that was sort of also in the DNA of this movie and stuff too, because we see now he has a literal nightmare. So as the nightmare goes, we see shots from the Avengers movie. So we see the portal that we talked about. We see Iron Man flying up with the nuke. I always think it's interesting when they do movies or nightmare flashbacks that were flashbacks of other movies, because he wouldn't be seeing it from this perspective.
Oh, right.
It's always one of those like movie tropes where you'd like, wouldn't this all be from like his perspective? Like, but of course that'd be expensive to reshoot all that. The one odd shot in that whole thing, it's, obviously he's having, this is a stress dream. He's all this moment in his life where everything changed. He felt the most vulnerable, the most he was going to die. We see even the shot of Pepper, the call failing to her from Avengers, I remember was a big moment in that. And then falling from the portal. And then the next shot is a shot from like 2 minutes ago in this movie of Pepper with the Mark 42 armor, which he's not in it. It's I suppose they wanted to have a Pepper shot from this movie, so it was her there. But it's so weird that it's that shot from earlier on.
Well, I think his psychosis is playing games with him.
Oh, okay.
And I think that in this, okay, you know what I got super vibes of this scene, seeing this again, is I was like, this is Anakin having nightmares about Padme. Mm-hmm. And the psychosis is actually manifesting itself. So what I think what this nightmare is supposed to represent is he's so afraid of something happening to Pepper that his greatest fear is that he will be the death of Pepper.
Oh, yeah.
And so
I understand why Pepper would be in the dream. It just seems weird that it's from today, like essentially of the day.
Well, because I think he's thinking, well, I mean, what would happen, and here's what's about to happen, the worst nightmare, that I am going to be responsible for something happening to Pepper. Because and I think this is what's happening here, is I think he's realizing my brain is moving so fast. I'm still dealing with the PTSD of what happened in New York. Mm-hmm. My brain is moving so fast that in my effort to try to do more, I'm missing things and I'm making mistakes. And those things can't be fatal because I know something bad is coming. He's got a lot going on.
Yeah. And obviously the stress and fear is all bubbling up. And fortunately, he still has a connection. So as Pepper is trying to wake him up, the Mark 42 armor has assembled itself, or it was still assembled from before, and grabs her as if she's a threat to Tony.
Right.
Which then he immediately wakes up and sees this happening. There is a comic book a part of Iron Man that was called The Mask in the Iron Man, where the suit becomes animate. And actually, when this trailer came out, people thought that was what they were adapting. The suit actually just becomes jealous of Tony and then starts to take over. It's not a particularly great storyline, but they thought, because they used that shot in almost all the trailers.
Right.
But then it turns out it is not. As he gets up and sees this is happening, he says, "Power down," and it immediately does, which I thought was interesting, that there's a voice command or whatever to it. And then he does what you referred to in the opening thing, the sort of chopping motion. I thought of it as a samurai sword. I thought of it like a strike, but yeah, I can see what you mean with
well, he's got the fingers out, but it's a double axe handle.
Yeah.
Yeah. He goes to town, which, by the way, it's almost like I mean, it's for effect.
Yeah.
But I mean, the destruction of it is pretty thorough. Like it breaks down into all its pieces that we saw earlier in the movie as they were trying to assemble automatically.
Yeah. And I mean, it does just show that he had a gesture built in, as it is like all these things of like he has the specific gestures for specific pieces. He has a gesture specifically for disassemble the suit. And so we get to see that in action there. And so obviously all the goodwill and positivity that had happened earlier on is now totally gone as one of the suits just tried to kill Pepper, or at least, threaten her.
And by the way, I'm not sure whether or not this plays a role later on in the movie, but this is where you really get the sense that Tony has started to confront the idea that maybe removing technology from his body is a good idea.
Maybe adding more or putting technology in his body is maybe not a great idea.
I think that this is where he has the moment of realization that there is a line between the machine and the man.
Yeah. Yeah, and now it is getting blurred, and one of his fears, has literally come to pass. Like from early on today, he said one of his biggest fears. Now it turns out he was almost the architect of that coming true.
By the way, can we give props to Pepper?
Yeah,
she's something else. Because I mean, one, she's upset.
Yeah.
That has to not be a cool thing to wake up to,
right? In
the midst of everything that was going on. She handles it pretty well with some pretty decent attitude. Well earned, by the way.
Yeah. And it does not, they don't play it as that she's the scared woman.
No.
Like freaked out and stuff too. She immediately goes to like, this is out of control. Like this is like, now it's gotten into full on danger. Like we've gone back from just like being worried. Now it's like, okay, now this is a serious thing. So now is not the time to deal with it. So she says, I'm going to sleep downstairs, tinker with that.
Boom.
Like, ooh,
mic drop.
Fair enough. Yeah. And you can see this probably, like, as we know, this is the first sleep Tony has gotten in days.
Yeah.
And he is still completely groggy, disembodied. Like he's just, at least like, just wait. And like trying to get his bearings and figure out what is happening as he's been sweating and, came out of this reliving this terrible moment for him too. So yeah, he can see he is in a bad way. Yeah. And so, but then we cut from that to another locale in California. This is Grauman's Chinese Theater, now known as the TCL Chinese Theater, because I guess we've run out of good names now. It's
wasn't it Mann's Chinese Theater?
Yeah, I thought it was Grauman's was the original one. Man, that Wikipedia is just like, and then this corporate owner, and then this corporate owner, and then this corporate owner. It's just like changing hands all the way through.
So it's the TCL Chinese Theater.
Yeah, it's now called the TCL Chinese Theater.
The people who make TVs and stuff?
Yeah. Yeah, they bought it. So it hosted the Oscars for a couple times. I mean, it's kind of a long history and stuff too, but a lot of it was just like literally just the things about changing hands. It opened on May 18th, 1927 with the premiere of Cecil B. DeMille's The King of Kings, which if you did a minute of that, you'd be here for a long time. So it also has hosted many famous premieres, one of the most famous being Star Wars. So there's a very famous picture of the lines around the block for people going to see it in Star Wars. And if you listen to the Blockbuster podcast, which is a big fan of not only myself, but also our podcast daddy, Pete Wright, it is a dramatization of the sort of the rise of George Lucas and his and there is a whole scene where he's under the assumption that Star Wars is a flop and that no one's going to see it. And he is down the street from the Chinese theater. Yeah. And they dramatize the scene of him them taking him out and going, no, look at what's happening. And like it's seeing the line wrapped around the block. And then him finally realizing that like this thing that he thought was going to destroy his career is now going to be the biggest thing in his life. By the
way, cool thing about this that I did not realize. So the theater, like you said, premiered with the movie in 1927. Mm-hmm. Star Wars 50 years later, 77, meaning that 2027, not only the 50th anniversary of Star Wars, the 100th anniversary of this theater.
Yeah. Yeah,
cool.
Still in operation.
That's going to be big.
It's a first-run theater. You can go down and I can tell you, having been there, it is not in a great part of town.
No, it's not.
they've done some good, some cleaning up of the area and stuff too. But it is on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. But yeah, it's a little rough.
At the time of recording, they got a couple of years to get it all ready for the big anniversary year. Yeah. So let's do it. They got to do something because that's going to be huge. That will be a tremendous year.
Yeah.
For both things. Yeah.
So we see as we're then cut to sort of closer and people milling around and the tourists and stuff too. We see that there is a holiday film festival going to be on there, and we look at that. It's our second reference to A Christmas Story, because that is the first one in their film festival, followed by the original Miracle on 34th Street, then White Christmas, then It's a Wonderful Life. So pretty safe, expected holiday films, still classics of the day that are still in there. Then the next cut we see is to some dog tags. And as we come back, we see that these are being held by a man known as Taggart. This is a character being played by Ashley Hamilton. Ashley Hamilton has 24 credits on IMDb. Rob, we're not going to play the IMDb game with him.
I just was like, hey, wait a minute.
His first big break was in Beethoven's Second. Oh. Remember the Beethoven movies about the big St. Bernard?
Was Grodin in those? Charles Grodin? No, there was that.
Yes.
He really?
One, yeah.
Oh, see, okay, there we go.
He is the son of George Hamilton, the actor from the 70s and 80s. Yes.
I knew that jawline looked familiar. I knew that jawline.
We're not going to play the IMDb with him either, but he's what I remember him as Zorro the Gay Blade.
Oh my God!
Big roles, but this is his son Ashley, who's still out there, still working, still hustling, still
fantastic. That's cool.
So as he's sitting there trying to apparently upset or focusing on something, we see our old friend Savin show up with a briefcase. And as he's going to transfer this over, then we find out that Savin is being tracked by Happy Hogan. He's over at the sunglass booth trying sunglasses, but also, using some of his newfound head of security skills to look in the mirror and watch whatever this weird exchange is.
He's a goof. Let's just say he's a goof. Didn't change his clothes. Looks like a goon.
As soon as he set up Pepper's car, he probably got in the car and immediately followed Savin. And has been following him all day. So he's probably right from work. This is, I think we're meant to think this is the same day. Like this is happening at the same time that Tony's having his nightmare. So as they're talking, they have a conversation. And then one of the first questions Savin asks is, can you regulate? Which we're not exactly sure what it is. And Taggart assures him that yes, he has in control. He absolutely can. We're not exactly sure what that means.
Mm-hmm. Doesn't sound good.
No, it doesn't sound good, but, Savin is very dismissive, but sort of has delivered this thing and doesn't really want to have a conversation, doesn't really want to talk, just wants to move on. So he turns and leaves. And then as Taggart opens the case, we see it's full of all these strange metal shapes, almost like arrowheads, these strange little metal pieces. We don't know exactly what that is. But as he gets up to leave the Chinese theater, maybe to catch a movie, he is run into by Happy Hogan. So Happy Hogan body checks him and ends up knocking the suitcase out of his hand, and then some of these pieces spill around the way, and Happy plays it up and like, oh man, I'm so sorry, let me help you with that, and helps him to get all the stuff in. But as they make eye contact, then something strange happens with Taggart, and we see this sort of orange flickering effect through his face and into his eyes and things, and even Happy notices that. But Taggart immediately does not want anything to do with this. He grabs everything and then tries to get out of there as fast as possible. But we find that as he walks away and Happy goes the other way, Happy has grabbed one of these strange metal shapes. So we don't know exactly what is going on, but neither does Happy. But he knows that whatever this is, it's important. But as he's going away, then the same move he just did is used on him, because then Savin has watched this happening and then immediately clocks it and runs into Happy, and the two of them face off. And then that is where minute 25 comes to an end.
Oh, wait.
Confrontation. So we're not going to find out what they have to say to each other until the very next minute.
Okay, two things. One, the little metal things. Mm-hmm. They look like to me is, remember those little cap bombs we used to have when we were kids? The little metal bombs. You put like from a cap gun and you drop it. That's exactly what I see when I see these things. I'm still disgusted by Happy. He's just incompetent.
Does it help you that he's probably going to be severely punished for his actions?
Will he? Oh, I don't know. Oh, do you have something to look forward to?
Apparently.
Okay, I do also want to say this though. The Extremis, I would assume Extremis effect that's happening, very cool.
Yeah, that is really cool. It's very subtle.
Really cool.
Yeah.
Subtle, but man, does it look awesome.
Yeah.
Like they map that perfectly to the face. And I mean, it literally looks like what the effect is. It looks like the guy's skull is on fire.
Yeah.
And it is just an incredible effect. I can't wait to see more of it in this film because it is one of the highlights of the CGI.
Yeah, exactly. The CG artists are really doing it and a nice job here. As they, like, this is very subtle. We're going to see it much more overt later on, but this is a nice thing. And enough that I don't think at this point we're supposed to connect it to the plant, but it does have that sort of, that it's the same as as the plant got broken out, had that same sort of orange glowy thing, but not quite as overt. So orange.
Oh no, it's a tease. It's a tease.
Orange is definitely something we're supposed to be keeping our eyes out for.
Yeah.
So that'll be the end of 25. We'll be back for the confrontation for that. As I say, in the old days of Marvel Movie Minute, we always had a series of things we would go through of like on socials and all these kind of things. I feel it's so repetitious of saying the same thing at the end of everyone. Do you have any pitches for us to try and persuade people to become members?
Well, I want to think about all those $5 things. You're always saying that it's less than a Happy Meal.
Yeah.
I think Pez dispensers are now $5.
Wow, really?
Which is outrageous to me. Yeah. I mean, that seems odd. Socks. I mean, there's a lot of things like hair clips. There are so many things that cost more than what you could spend, the dear listener, on helping to invest in wonderful entertainment connected to the things that you love in pop culture. And what else would you do than to give a little bit of your hard-earned money to us, for us to produce more great content for your ears?
That's right. Yeah, I like the investment. That's really good. Investing in things you like, so you can get more of it. I mean, it's the American way.
I'm full of it. Anyway, all right. So,
well, we appreciate all the people to our members who are listening to this early. Thank you very much. We appreciate you helping keep going. And for those of you who aren't in a position to help us, you are just as welcome here as everyone else. Be back here next time for our next confrontation, and maybe we might see some fireworks. You'll have to listen along and find out. Enough said.
Bye.